What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Raw Prospect Podcast, episode 147. Today we're covering college hoops, going through all the top teams in the Big 12 in men's college basketball. But before we get to that, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to keep up with all our content. And before we begin, joining me from Austin, Texas, the Stat King himself, Mr. Michael Ween. What's up?
What is up, everybody? We're going to try to bring the energy. It is currently, what time is it? 12:23 a.m. on Saturday, February 4th. College basketball. What do I tell people every year? If you don't pay attention for the first 3 months of the season, start paying attention now. It's early February. Before you know it, in 3.5 weeks from now, we're going to be in conference tournaments, and then in the snap of the finger, we're on to March Madness. And if you want to fill out some good brackets this year and get a good feel for some of these teams, you don't have to tune into every game. You don't have to sit down and watch every game, every premier game every night. Just maybe tune in for a half here and there of some of these games that we have coming up, especially this weekend. Before we get into it, I just wanted to go through as like a little advertisement for college basketball, some of the games that we have on the docket just for today, as in Saturday, February 4th. Saturday is a great day now to tune into college basketball. It's when most of the great games are on. There's also great games on usually Tuesday and Wednesday. So just check your local channels, check ESPN for the schedule. But tomorrow or today, number 8 Kansas traveling to number 13 Iowa State. We're going to talk about both of those teams. That game happens at 11 a.m. on ESPN. If you have ESPN, you can watch that game. Those are two really, really good teams, both of which I think you could potentially see in the Sweet 16, Elite 8, maybe the Final Four if things go right. Texas Tech and Baylor. Texas Tech has had an off year, but they're still dangerous right at the bottom of the Big 12, going up against Baylor and that three-headed monster. Baylor currently ranked 11. The two teams at the top battle. Number 10, Texas, and number 7, K-State. They battle in Manhattan. K-State won the first matchup here in Austin, where they put up 116 points. That was right after the Beard firing. But K-State's a really good team. Some people are questioning the legitimacy of their start so far, but we'll talk about that. That's going to be a great game. That's going to be at 3 p.m. on ESPN2. And there are a lot of other games, including UNC and Duke. And I get it. Both teams are unranked right now. But if you're going to tell me that that game should be overlooked because both teams are unranked and they're not having the best of seasons, you're out of your mind and you don't know what you're talking about, because it doesn't matter where the teams are ranked. It doesn't matter what kind of seasons they're having. Those games are almost always fantastic. And that game will be at 5 p.m. on ESPN. So there are some great games all over the country, not just in the Big 12, but I encourage you to tune in some over the next couple weeks as we gear towards March Madness. But let's just get right into the content. I'm unable to hear you. Can you hear me? Okay, I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry about that, y'all. I think I nudged the mute button or something. Anyways, we're gonna go through all the top teams in the conference, starting with Texas, the number 1 team at 18-4 currently, and 7-2 within the conference. I'll start off with you. What do you think of the Longhorn season so far? As someone who's been on campus and been to a lot of the home games, what's your overall outlook on the team?
Well, it's not the season I don't think any Longhorn fan thought we'd be having, just in terms of what's happened associated with the Texas Longhorn basketball team just over the past couple months with the situation with Chris Beard. We won't dive into that right now. It's a situation for another day. He just put his house on the market here in Austin. We'll see how that legal situation works itself out. I think Texas made the right decision. I will say that. And look, the first thing I'll say is with the situation that Rodney Terry, the current interim head coach, took over, I think he's done an absolutely fantastic job. I mean, I don't think you could do any better. I mean, you have to think about it, and I'll pass it to you so we can have more of a back and forth conversation before I give my full thoughts. Because if I give my full thoughts now, I guarantee you I'll be speaking for 8 to 10 minutes. So I'll just say I think Rodney Terry's done a fantastic job because you have to understand these are players, whether they're transfers or recruits, that committed to the Texas Longhorns because they wanted to play for Chris Beard. That's why they came to Texas. They saw what Chris Beard did last year, taking Texas to the tournament, winning the first tournament game that they had won in like over 10 years. They saw what Chris Beard was building and recruiting. 2 5-star recruits right now on campus, 2 more incoming next year. We can talk about the coaching situation and who Texas should go after the season, but I think the biggest takeaway is what Rodney Terry has been able to do as he's taken over in December and led this team into conference play. And now halfway through Big 12 play, it's the halfway mark. 9 games, you play 18 games in conference in the Big 12. Every team in the Big 12 has played 9 conference games. It's the exact halfway point. So to be first place at the beginning of February is absolutely fantastic, in my opinion. We can talk about the team. You can give your quick thoughts, and I'll finish off mine.
My thinking is just the step forward in the efficiency from the offensive perspective has been the biggest key, in my opinion, and that's really showed itself in closing games, in clutch moments, right at the end of games. The offensive execution has been there, and I think that's the result of being in year 2 of this system, whether it be with obviously Chris Beard or the new guy they have. It's been very consistent, and they're top 32 in the country in points per game. And I can't even tell you how long it's been since I've seen Texas with an offense that good. It seems every single year this offense is the part of the team that's the weakness. And this year there's just way more depth. There's more shooting in all 5 positions, and there's just a much more balanced team offensively. And I think that's what's played a role in it the most. The defense has been there, but the defense is always there with these Texas teams. We have always recruit players with a lot of length and defensive versatility, particularly at the big men positions at power forward and center. But this year, the offense has really come around.
I'll speak to what I like, and I have 2 concerns for this Texas team right now. I think they're a really, really good team. I can't say they're elite right now, but I think they're really, really good. I mean, you have to be at the top of the Big 12. And by really, really good, I mean Sweet 16, Elite 8 good. I think they're really that good. I'm not sure if they're Final Four good yet because of my 2 concerns. However, I think they're right there in the tier below those top teams that we're considering right now for Final Four contention, like Purdue, like maybe a Houston or an Alabama. Those teams, I think Texas is right there, a tier below those teams. And I think on their best day, they could beat any of those teams. That's what I think That's where I think Texas is right now. Now, they still have a really tough stretch coming up. The good thing for Texas is in this conference, there's really no loss that's a bad loss. That's really going to kill you in resume building come tournament time and your seed line come tournament time. Uh, Almost every team in this conference is going to make the tournament. I think as of right now, 9 teams in this conference are going to make the tournament. There are 10 teams in the Big 12. 9 of them, I think, are almost locked to get in. That's how good the conference is. The reason there are 6 teams in the top 15 right now at the AP poll that are ranked in the Big 12, but none in the top 5 is because these Big 12 teams just cannibalize each other. And so none of them are able to actually rise up that far because they're losing to other Big 12 teams. So it's just a super really elite conference itself. But real fast, what you said about the offense is absolutely correct. As of a week ago, they led the Big 12 in points per game, scoring over 80 points per game. The defense, while it's not, I don't think, at times as locked in over the course of a 40-minute game as it was when Chris Beard was here, I think when they have to get stops, they will get stops. And we've seen that the past couple games when they've been in tight games and had to close out games. That's where I like this Texas defense. Is situationally, I think they're really good. Over the course of 40 minutes, there might be some lapses here and there because Chris is no longer there. But I think when you have to get stops, they will make stops. So I'm confident in that. Marcus Carr. I mean, we can't talk about Texas and not mention what Marcus Carr has done so far this year. He looks like the Minnesota version of Marcus Carr, except in a better system with a lot better players around him. And he has a partner in crime now with the Big 12 Freshman of the Year who transferred to Texas from Iowa State, and Tyrese Hunter. Hunter exploded offensively in non-conference. He struggled a little bit in conference play, but we've seen some flashes the past couple games. And what he really provides is he takes the pressure off of Marcus Carr defensively because he's an all-world defender as a guard. Timmy Allen is, of course, the mid-range maestro. Thrives cutting to the basket, moving off ball. Not a great three-point shooter, but he's been really good offensively this season, especially late in games. And then off the bench, another transfer. Overlooked in the offseason, Jabari Rice. Call him Jabari Rice. Transfer from New Mexico State. He played with Timmy Allen's brother at New Mexico State. They made the tournament last year. I'm not sure if you remember Teddy Allen, but he's been really good. 3 straight 20-plus point games off the bench. He's the best three-point shooter on this team. It's not even remotely close. He's just made a huge difference. Super smart player. Played at a winning program in New Mexico State. Transfers to Texas. And with better players around him, he's made all the difference in the world, especially in that bench unit. The freshmen have had their moments too. Arterio Morris, the 5-star point guard, and Dylan Mitchell, the number 4 overall rated high school recruit and 5-star power forward / small forward. I don't know how you want to categorize him. But the concerns. I think when you look at this Texas team, I always say you got to check 3 boxes to be a Final Four contender. Coaching, experience, and guard play. Those are the 3 boxes that I think you need to check in order to be considered a real Final Four championship level contender. I think they check 2 of those boxes right now, 2.5 of those boxes right now. I think Rodney Terry has halfway proven himself. We still have to see with how Texas finishes out the season, but it's been really good so far. I like it, a lot of things that I'm seeing. They've bounced back from a loss every time they've had a loss. They've had some huge wins. They're actually second in the country in terms of quad 1 victories, which I love. And let's be honest, in the Big 12, you get more opportunities for quad 1 victories, but still. they've been really good, better against ranked teams than we've ever seen them. But I still got to see more from Rodney Terry and this coaching staff and whether or not they can win in high pressure moments. That's why we brought Chris Beard here, because Chris Beard had proven that he, even with lesser talent, he was great in the tournament, making adjustments, doing everything that you need to do to win in the tournament, because it's a different type of game come the tournament. And so I still got to see it from Rodney Terry, but experience, Texas has a load of that with all the transfers that they have, super seniors, players staying an extra year. Don't worry one bit about experience. And guard play, I think, is a lot better this year.
Right. Okay. I think with that, we'll move right along to our second team, Kansas State, who had a huge win a few weeks ago against Kansas that I actually caught the second half of that game. This team came out of nowhere in my eyes. I'm not sure if I never really saw the preseason rankings for them, but from what I've seen, I didn't really see this coming. They've got a really balanced lineup. But I'll let you start off. What do you think about Kansas State?
Well, K-State, in my opinion, right now, there are some other great candidates. Jerome Tang, in case you haven't heard of him, go look him up. He's, I think, in one of his first years as K-State head coach, I believe. He was assistant on this staff for a long time under their previous coach. K-State's they've had some relatively successful years in basketball. They've sort of been an in and out program, but I think Jerome Tang, with what he's been able to do with the K-State team that was picked to finish towards the bottom of the Big 12 this year in the preseason polls. Now, that just tells you everything to know about preseason polls, but still, they were picked by the coaches to finish towards the bottom of the Big 12 in preseason this year. And with all that being said, they struggled a little bit early out of the gates, but they've had some huge wins that are going to help them resume-wise. Keontae Johnson, the transfer from Florida, who, if you remember, actually had a similar situation to DeMar Hamlin in the NFL. It's amazing that he's playing again. Actually went into he collapsed on the court. I believe it was cardiac arrest a couple of years ago at Florida, took a year off last year, and now is back playing. And he's been a super impactful transfer, scorer, defender, and gives them some wing depth that they so desperately needed. Marquise Noel, their point guard, I believe he's averaging north of like 20, 23 points per game. He's provided a huge scoring punch. They have some other great players as well. But Keontae George, what a story. And Jerome Tang right now would be my pick for National Coach of the Year.
All right. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, Keontae Johnson, the thing that stands out to me is just the shot making. I mean, all three levels of the floor, he's able to get to his spots. He shoots 39% from three, and a lot of those are pull-ups, and 52% from the field. I mean, that's National Player of the Year level of efficiency. And he's a guy who might get some looks in the NBA draft. You never know. But I don't really have much to say about the other parts of their team because I haven't really watched them much. But from what I saw in that Kansas game, Keontae Johnson is one of the best players in the country. He just jumped off the screen right away.
Well, he's absolutely the best story in the country. And I mean, he's one of the best players in the Big 12, no doubt. And if you're one of the best players in the Big 12, then you are one of the best players in the country. I hate to tell you that. The past two national champions have come from the Big 12. I mean, this is just the best conference. Look at it top to bottom. There's no argument. And it's not to say other conferences are bad. I actually think I have a lot of good things to say about the Big 10. I have a lot of good things, despite what some people think, to say about the ACC, the Pac-12, so on and so forth. but the Big 12 has just separated itself. And if you're going to argue with that, well, then I don't know what to tell you. But yes, I think I got confused. I think I one time said Keontae George, who's actually a freshman at Baylor. He's another great Keontae. So I may have mixed them up. But yes, Keontae Johnson for K-State. Be sure to watch him between now and tournament time.
Right. Okay. Next team that Kansas State had beat and that I mentioned before, Kansas. The defending national champions are 18-4 currently and 6-3 in conference play. They're currently number 8 in the country according to the AP poll, and with their experience, with the coaching of Bill Self, they're positioned right in the center of things. They're a blue blood, and they won't go down easily. I think as of right now, you could make the argument that they should be the favorites to win the Big 12. They'll have to make up some ground to close the year, but given the pedigree of this team and the history of this program, I think you can't count them out. No question about it. The headliner scorer on this team, Jalen Wilson, who was kind of in a support role last year, from what I could see. He's really taken a step forward and become the number one option. It's averaging 21.3 points per game, and he's been extremely solid for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas, I think it was a week or two ago, before they won at Kentucky at Rupp Arena last weekend, they were on a 3-game losing streak, and everyone started to worry, what's wrong with Kansas? What's wrong with Kansas? And let me just tell you something. There's nothing wrong with Kansas. Even when you think there's something wrong with Kansas, there's nothing wrong with Kansas. And all you have to do is think back to last year. And I know they lost some talent, but they have a lot of the main guys back from that team, including Jalen Wilson, who, in my eyes, if I had to rank my top 5 right now for National Player of the Year, he's probably not above Zach Edey. I mean, Brandon Miller from Alabama is up there. There are some other great candidates as well, but Jalen Wilson, no doubt, would be in my top 5. He's one of the best players in the Big 12. I think he's going to be first team All Big 12, which is a fantastic thing for him. You mentioned his scoring averages, averaging over 20 points per game. But I think something that's gone overlooked is his ability to play make. I think he's taken a step forward in that department as well. They have a veteran point guard, which is absolutely something that you have to have come the tournament. And DeJuan Harris, who's been in the Bill Self system for years now. I think he's a super senior, meaning he's stayed an extra year because of the whole COVID situation. They have some other great players as well. Grady Dick, the great freshman. He's been he's been I think the reason I'm laughing is not because of the name Dick. It's because I'm thinking back to all the memes that I've seen on Twitter of the TV and catching it in weird moments. The Kansas fan with the shirt that says "I love Dick," that sort of thing. Yeah, that's another conversation for another day. But Grady Dick, the point is, great freshman, gives some energy, spearheading this team, and something that I think they've been missing in that 3-point shooting department. And then, of course, Bill Self teams are always going to be sound defensively. So I don't worry about Kansas. You still have, well, they just beat K-State at home this past Tuesday. So you saw the first game that was in Manhattan, but they just beat them in Kansas on Tuesday, and you have 2 matchups left with I believe, Texas, one of which is coming up this coming Monday at Fog Island. So you could easily make up that ground, only being one game behind in conference if you beat Texas twice, which is going to be tough. But even if you beat them once, you could still easily make up that ground if Texas has a little downfall or a little down stretch, if you will, over the next 9 games of conference play, which could easily happen with the teams that they have to play upcoming. So I'm not worried about Kansas. No, not one bit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they still have to play Texas, and they've got a lot of important games to come still. You could even look at those 3 losses they had. You still play Baylor again, you still play TCU again, and they just avenged that loss to Kansas State and beat them at home. So they still have a lot of season to go and a lot of important matchups where that could really, decide where they sit come, late February.
All right.
Next team is going to be
I believe it's
TCU. Yeah, TCU is next. TCU is currently sitting at 17-5, 6-3 in conference, including the win I just mentioned against Kansas. They're currently, uh, dang, I forgot. I can't find what I was just going to say, but um,
You're good.
I'll let you start. What do you think about TCU so far?
Well, first of all, what is it with teams that were purple this year? I mean, think about the football season with the Big 12 championship, which was TCU, who wears purple, against K State, who wears purple. Um, and K State ended up winning that. But then TCU, wearing their purple, went on to play in the national championship against Georgia. Um, what happened after that, after they got to that game, got off the bus? Well, we can talk about that a different day. But yeah, and then now you have K State sitting right up there, and you have TCU sitting right up there in basketball. Something really concerns me though with TCU. Um, it's a great roster, but injuries are starting to pile up over the past week or so. Uh, Last weekend, I believe, was the Big 12 SEC Challenge, and they lost their star player, Mike Miles Jr., who left that game with a right knee hyperextension. I'm not sure how long he is out, but he will be out for a couple games at least. Um, they also lost one of their key post players, Eddie Lampkin Jr., who's been out with an ankle injury, and one of their reserve guards, Rondell Walker, has been out with a recurring illness. So hopefully they get some of these guys back. But going into the second half of conference play, it's not the best to be missing those guys. And you don't want to fall too far in the standings. But look, if they have those guys on the court, uh, they're a really good team, and I wouldn't want to see any team in purple, given what we've seen this year so far to this point. So, yeah,
Yeah, that's definitely a point I wouldn't have thought of, but I can see what you're saying there. You're kind of getting somewhere. I mean TCU. I mean, just as a school, you can't understate the amount of success they've had athletically. I mean, getting to a football national championship is an extremely impressive feat, and it just getting into the playoff is something a lot of blue blood schools that are way bigger than TCU haven't even done yet. So, um, again, I'm getting a little off track here, but uh, I think TCU to close the year, I think realistically they'll be sitting in the third spot somewhere in there.
yeah. And the last thing I'll say about TCU is if Mike Miles Jr. is healthy, he's one of those guys that I think will if he plays enough down the stretch in big games and TCU wins some of those games, he's a guy that, first of all, will make first team All Big 12, along with Jalen Wilson and some of these other guys that we've talked about. And he's a guy that when you need a shot, when you need a bucket, he can get you that bucket. And that's where I really like TCU come the tournament, because sometimes all it takes is a guy to get hot for a couple games and you can go pretty far in the tournament. So that's where I really start to fear TCU, is if he's healthy, along with Eddie Lampkin, sort of that 1-2 guard post player punch that we've seen succeed so many times in March Madness. Then that's where I really start to like TCU as sort of like an underdog, overlooked team for the casual college basketball fan making a run in the tournament.
Right. Okay. Let's move along here. Next team, our second to last team we're covering today in a short episode, Iowa State. Iowa State's currently 15-6 and 6-3 in conference play as well. Let's see. I'll let you start again, just because I'm still getting introduced to a lot of these teams as well. I haven't watched a ton of college basketball this year, but starting from now, I will be tuning into a lot of these games. So, what do you think about Iowa State so far, and what's their outlook for the rest of the season?
First of all, no need to worry. This is why we're doing this, to give you guys an introduction, not only to Emmy, but to all of you guys who like basketball in general and do watch March Madness, which I know you do. Even if you don't watch college basketball during the regular season, don't tell me that you don't watch March Madness. Um, and so that's why we're doing this. And I do watch college basketball. I'm sort of a nerd that way. Mainly Big 12, but I watch some other games if they're marquee games as well. So that's why I know a lot about it. And I'm here to tell you guys, give you an introduction, and it's never too late. As long as you start watching before conference tournaments and going into March Madness, you'll be all right. Iowa State 15-5 or 15-6, my bad. 6-3 in conference. They're really tied for second in the Big 12, because all that matters in the Big 12 is your conference record. And I think there's a whole bunch of teams that have a 6-3 conference record, right below Texas at 7-2. And look, on a night you could be in first place in an instant. That's just how tight things are right now. It's interesting. Don't even
A little
start.
tight.
Don't even start with that right now.
Sorry.
In case you guys don't know, that's a reference to a Mike Tomlin video last year, but we won't get into that right now. Iowa State, they've been really good against really good teams, and that's really good. They beat Texas at home, and they beat Kansas State all in the past 2 weeks, or 3 weeks-ish, excluding the Big 12 SEC Challenge. But they've also lost some games in that stretch. What really stands out to me for this team in particular is it reminds me a lot of the Iowa State teams with like Gorgeous Niang back in like the 2013, 2014 range, when they had all those three-point shooters and they had a really tough, gritty, defensive, grinded out mindset. But if they got hot, you didn't want to see them in the tournament. And that's sort of what this Iowa State team reminds me of. They have a lot of shooters. Caleb Grill, he's dealing with a back spasm issue right now, but he's been really good so far. They have so many others. They're shooting, I believe, at one point over a 3-game stretch, they shot 42% from three. I think they're one of the top teams in the Big 12 in terms of three-point shooting. So yeah, look, they can shoot the lights out. I need to see them win big games on the road. But look, they could absolutely be dangerous. because the Big 12, I think, is going to prepare them for what they're going to play in March. And what have we seen the past couple years? National champions come out of the Big 12. I'm not saying that's going to definitely happen this year, but with the amount of teams that we're discussing, Iowa State's certainly right in that mix.
Right, exactly. And a lot of it is just getting hot at the right time. All these teams that we've talked about over the course of this episode so far, they all have the talent. They all have the talent needed. You can, argue here and there, like some of the talent around the edges, but overall, their main rotation guys are some of the best in the country. And if you got one of these teams playing their best at the right time, you can see them going really deep into the tournament. Just because they've been battle tested, throughout the entire season. There's no off games in the Big 12. You have to bring it every single night, and that that environment, that competitive environment in your conference, that really um makes you into a more resilient team.
Exactly. Absolutely. Our final team for this episode, and we might do a little big picture discussion before we wrap things up, where we see things going real fast before we wrap it up. But Baylor, team that won the national championship the year before last year, so uh, um, Baylor then Kansas. This team still has that, somehow they still have that three-headed monster at the guard position. That's oh so scary, and that makes them oh so dangerous. Um, LJ Cryer, you probably remember the name. Adam Flagler, these names probably ring a bell if you've been watching the college basketball March Madness the past couple of years. And then the freshman who I mentioned earlier, along with I mixed him up with Keontae Johnson from Kansas State. Keontae George, one of the top recruits in the country, top freshman, commits to Baylor to play under Scott Drew, and what can you blame him for? I mean, this has been one of the better programs over the course of the past 5 or so years. They've been consistent, and just because they're sitting right now at the 6th spot in the Big 12 does not mean that they are no slouch of a team. In fact, they could probably beat most of the other top teams in the other conferences matched up on a neutral court because of their three-guard combo. All of them can shoot the three. Keontae George just gives them a different dimension in terms of shot creation, what he can do. He can take over a game, and that's saying something considering he's only a freshman. He's just a different player. And I don't know if he'll come out this year or if he'll come out next year, but he's going to be a lottery pick for sure with his talent going into the NBA. He's a name to watch out for either this year or next year whenever he decides to declare for the NBA. LJ Cryer, a three-point shooting maestro. Adam Flagler can do a lot of things, do some dirty work in the paint, great off the dribble. All three guards for Baylor are averaging over 15 points per game. That is rare in college basketball. My only question for Baylor is they check the coaching box. Scott Drew, absolutely proven top 5 coach in college basketball, in my opinion, has won a national championship. I mean, there's nothing you can say right there. And now he's recruiting elite talent to go to Waco to play for him. With the likes of Keontae George. And then also they have guard play and they're experienced. So they check a lot of the boxes. My only question is going to be, what does that front court look like? We know they have Flo Thamba. We know they have Jonathan Chama Chachua, I believe is how you pronounce his name. But we've seen them get in foul trouble. They have hard time staying on the court. And they're not very versatile offensively. So at some point, you're going to face a team that is going to have a Zach Edey, that is going to have a big guy like Hunter Dickinson from Michigan or Armando Baycott from North Carolina. I mean, these guys are spread out across the country. And at some point in the tournament, if you're making a deep run, you're going to have to face one of those elite big guys. And if you're getting in foul trouble or you can't stay on the court or you're getting exposed on the interior because you just can't match up on the interior, well, it's going to be bad news bears for you that day. I'm telling you right now. So that's my only worry for Baylor right now. I'm not saying they can't do it, but I think it is a little bit of a concern. But look, it's going to be hard for anyone, not only in this conference, but across the country. Find me a team that has 3 guards, all averaging over 15 points per game.
I mean, you'd be tough pressed to find one. I mean, that's pretty rare.
It's very rare. So, look, all of these teams that we just talked about, they all have the things that you can nitpick, concerns if you've been watching them as long as I have. If you haven't, I encourage you to start watching maybe a game or two a week. It'd really help you. I've been going more off the eye tests this year, more so than I have in the past with all the KenPom statistics. I still do that occasionally, but I think my eye test is better this year, and it's going to help me come filling out brackets time. And that's why I've been able to speak so much about all these teams. But before we conclude, we're halfway through conference play. You see the standings, even the teams at the bottom. I mean, Oklahoma just absolutely destroyed Alabama. And Alabama, I still think right now is in that tier of teams that absolutely should be favored to win the national championship. I think they're that good. And I think Nate Oates is a super fantastic coach who doesn't get the credit that he deserves. But anywho, given what you know about the teams, even at the bottom of the Big 12, considering that as of right now, most bracketologists, including Joe Lunardi, have 8 or 9 minimum of the Big 12 teams making the tournament, almost the entire conference for that matter. Given where we stand right now, halfway through conference play, 1 or 2 minutes, where do you think it ends up at the end of the regular season? Who wins the conference?
Um,
I know I put you on the spot.
yeah, I think I would go with Kansas.
Okay, fair enough.
The experience, they're defending national champions, and I think come March, you can trust Bill Self to be able to you push the right buttons and get these guys to turn it on a little bit. I think I like the pace that they play with. They play fast, and because of that experience, you know how to execute in big moments. Some teams won't be able to have that experience to lean on, and I think in basketball that really does mean a lot. Being able to know mentally that you have done it before versus just thinking that you can is a completely different thing.
Absolutely. I could absolutely see Kansas winning the Big 12. At the end of the day, though, as tight as this conference is, I think we're going to end up having a tie between 2 teams. I think it's highly likely we're going to have two teams split the Big 12 regular season title.
You were asking about the regular season. I thought you meant the tournament.
Oh, well,
Okay.
I mean, any team could win the Big 12 tournament. We saw Texas win it with Shaka Smart a couple of years back. But I was talking the regular season, but that's okay. I mean, it applies to both, really. At the end of the day, with as tight as this conference is, with 9 games to go, with teams playing each other and how they cannibalize each other, I think we're going to end up in a situation where we're going to just have to go with two or three, maybe even 3 teams winning the Big 12 regular season title. Likely 2 teams. And if I had to pick right now, I think it's going to be Texas and Kansas that'll split the Big 12 regular season title as of right now.
Okay. Yeah, I can't argue with that based on what we've seen so far. But yeah, I think that'll wrap it up for today. But before we go, we did get big news in the NBA, and I feel like it would just be wrong to not touch on it. Um, and obviously, you want to hit on it while it's still hot. And Kyrie Irving requested a trade today. Um, the bomb was dropped, and I was like, "What? Like what?" I We'll get into this more on our NBA episode. We're gonna do one tomorrow or Sunday, but what I'll say right now is the timing is just baffling. I mean, it's like I was watching No Dunks earlier, formerly the Starters. If you had watched them on NBA TV when they worked there, but they made a really they had a really great analogy for it. It's like Kyrie has a alarm that goes off every month that's just like go get in the headlines, like go do something crazy. Um, it's like clockwork. I mean, it's just guaranteed to happen. But here we go. We're gonna see what happens here in the next week or so.
This it creeps on you. It creeps up. It creeps. I can't even talk. It's
It's like
1:09 a.m. But it's it this time of year creeps up on you so fast every year, at least for me, because it's like okay, you get excited around late December because you have the NBA Christmas, which every year has become this big event with the 5 games, and they're often really good games, or at least we get a couple really good games out of those. And so you're watching basketball all day, along with football, of course. But and then you sort of go into January, and as you get further into January, people start talking about, okay, well, all of a sudden the trade deadline is 2 weeks away, or the trade deadline is 3 weeks away, and now it's 1 week away, and you have this player that's Kyrie Irving, who, give him credit, when he's been on the court, he's been absolutely box office this year. I think he's one of like 3 or 4 players in the league right now, averaging 25 points per game, 5 assists per game, and 5 rebounds per game, something along those lines. I believe I saw earlier on TV. So he's been good, and he's helped the Nets win when he's been on the court. But we've seen this so many times already, where it's like he changes his mind in an instant, and I still don't think you can really trust him to be available when you really need him the most. But I don't know. I think on our episode this weekend, I think we're gonna do Western Conference tiers. I'm not sure yet, but we also got to
Mhm.
talk about where some of these teams stand in terms of what maybe they're looking to do with the upcoming trade deadline on Thursday. It's one of my favorite times of year in the NBA. Uh, the All-Star break, and then of course the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, and this is like riding our wheelhouse. I mean, you go back to the roots of this podcast. Some of our best episodes ever have been trade deadline episodes.
Oh yeah.
I think of the Porzingis trade. I think of the one where we brought Noah on. We did it in my bedroom when we were just recording on my webcam. I mean, this is one of the best episodes we do every year. I'm really excited for it. But yeah, that's gonna do it for episode 147, y'all. We're 3 away from 150, and it's kind of funny because we never recorded episode 100. So yeah, we just kind of skipped that because we wanted to do something special for it, and then we didn't, and then we just kept going. So
we'll
I
have
guess
to
technically we're at 146, but it's whatever.
we'll have to do something extra when we get to 150, or we can wait it out, and when we get to 200, sometime around the NBA playoffs, most likely, or near the NBA finals, we can do something really good for that. But I guess until this weekend, when you possibly see an NBA episode, hopefully we get that out to you guys as soon as possible. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, and watch listen to this podcast. If you really want to get a jump start in your college basketball watching, I think this segment was fantastic. It'll help you guys a lot as we speed into the second half of conference play. Maybe check out some of those games tomorrow as well. I guarantee you they will be good. They'll be worth your time. And so, with all that being said, as we fast forward ahead into Super Bowl week, can't wait. We're going to have so much Super Bowl content coming at you guys as well. Like Kyrie Irving's potential stay in Brooklyn, maybe we are gone.
Peace.
Peace.